when you're starting to look at it, and quite often people don't understand this, air typically has to have a much higher safety standard than fluids. When you're working in your area, Andrew, the work to burst relationship can be as low as 2 to 1. In hydraulics, it's always 4 to 1. In the air, it can be 5 to 10 to 1.
That's the safety factor rating on the hoses, yeah.
No, it's not safe. This nonsense about safety factor is not safe. That's nonsense. That's what they tell you. But it's work to burst pressure. Okay, so what you need to understand, like a lot of companies say, oh, it's safe at, you know, it's got a 45,000 burst and you're working at 15, so it's safe. Right? That's just not true.
Yeah.
What you have is a work to burst relationship of 3 to 1. But what they know as engineers, that a hose at 4 to 1, the materials will break down before the wires get fatigued. Do you understand what that means? That's 4 to 1 work to burst, the wires start to fatigue. Okay, what happens if you started at 3 to 1? When do the wires fatigue?
Earlier than the materials.
Earlier than materials, exactly right. And so what you see that a lot of people don't see is the accelerated death of a hose.
Yeah.
That's why when you test the hose, what we're looking for is, are the wires still, do they still have life left in them? Yeah. And so we did a test report earlier this year where they were saying, oh, you guys didn't test that hose. And we said, no, we did test the hose. It's been out and should have been retested now. It's on its 4th, it's finished 3 complete cycles.
Simon told me about that. I worked on that hose.
Yeah, I wrote the report and I simply said to them, what we conclusively know that if you go through 4 tests, if the hose comes back for the 4th test, we'll scrap it. We won't put it back into service. Yeah. Because conclusively, we know the life expectancy of that hose is 3 cycles, 3 testing cycles. Yeah. And the only thing that goes on is the wires fatigue, right? And so what you're doing is, if you don't understand, this nonsense, it's got this safety factor. That's nonsense. It's got work to burst relationships.
Yeah.
And in the industry, they say it's work to safety factor. That's nonsense. What happens is, when they design the hose, the rubber and all the other composites that are around the wires and that, in a UV environment, should normally last 7 years. And every time that you change some of the parameters, all you're doing is reducing the life of the hose. That's it. Because the life of a hose can be gauged very clearly and very predictably. Andy, that's what you do. So when we're looking at that hose, we're saying, yeah, we think it can go into service for another 3 to 6 months. And we're being predictive. We're not predicting. We're saying at this moment in time, with our inspection, we believe this hose will do this. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
This idea of saying, oh, well, it's got a safety factor. No. It's got a work to burst relationship. And so when you understand that, you start to realize what you're dealing with. Now, the next thing you have to understand, let's look at a hose. I might as well, since that we started this way, we might as well get into this as well. Okay, so we have the hose.
Yeah.
And on the hose, come on. All right, so we got the hose.
Yeah.
Now the bitter arrow. Like that. Can you see a hose, or is my drawing that poor?
No, that's good. Yeah.
Okay, now what we look at, what's this in the hose, Andy?
The inside tube or inner core.
Yes. Okay, so we got the outside, we got the inside. It didn't work so well. Okay, we got that. And we got that. Okay, so now you can see it, right? I know it's a poor illustration of a hose, but that's a hose.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have okay. We've got outer cover. What's the purpose of an outer cover?
To protect the wires.
Yeah, that's all it does. It protects the wires, right? And then we got a inside tube. What does the inside tube do?
Probably again protects the wires.
Yeah, the inside is, it has to be compatible,
Yeah.
right? So you've got to have this compatibility going on. So when you're looking at it, you're looking at the compatibility of whether it's air, whether it's gas, or whether it's fluid. This has to be compatible.
Yeah.
All right. The outer cover is going to consider the environment because it's protecting the outside of the house, correct? Okay. So what other feature do you have in the house?
The wires.
Yes, you have the wires. Now, what kind of wires do you have?
Braided or spiral.
So you have the braided ones, which look like this, right?
Yeah.
Can you see my hand? That's the way the braid works, right?
Yeah.
And then you've got the spiral ones. Where is it? That goes like this, right? And it lays that, like that, right? And so when it lays like that, what's actually going on with that?
They're more compact.
Yeah, but what else are they? They're not more compact. Braid's more compact.
Spirals.
The braid looks like this.
Yeah.
Braid, you theoretically get more metal in that way.
See, it's right in there, right?
Yeah.
So the spiral is a layer. So you imagine, can you see my hand again?
Lower.
Lower?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty good.
Okay, so you imagine that it goes like that. All right, when you put pressure on it, what does it do?
Yeah. It wants to move out.
So it flexes and allows a bit of,
Yeah, what does the braid do?
locks it completely in place.
No, the braid does exactly the same,
Okay.
but they're wires. And so when you look at it like this, see my fingers?
Yeah.
What did they now become?
Locking.
Yeah, what about scissors? They can actually see when you're moving a layer, it's rubbing against its own layer, right? But when it's a braid, it's actually like a scissor pinch.
Yeah.
But they can pinch it. And so the spirals will take a heck of a lot more pressure than a braid. So, but the braids are a lot cheaper to build and they're a lot lighter.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that your spiral hoses are a lot heavier? They don't bend as much and all the rest of it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what you have to understand is the outer cover is about the life expectancy of the hose. The inner cover is about the inner tube is about the compatibility, once again, the life expectancy of the hose. The braiding or spiraling is what holds the hose together, because when you think about it, okay, so now we've got coming in here, we got fluid going into here and it's traveling out of here. Okay, now as it's doing that, you've got pressure that is moving this way. Why is it moving this way?
Because of the pressure of the fluid inside the hose.
Yeah, so energy goes to the least line of resistance.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden it's now at the inside, the tube is restricting it, and all of a sudden it's now putting pressure on the wires, and it's called hoop. It's trying to push the hoop out.
Yeah.
Okay, now at exactly the same time as the hose increases in this way, so its diameter, the outer diameter starts to move this way. Can you see my hands? When it's moving this way. What happens to the length of the hose?
Shortens.
Yes, it has to shorten. So at that moment, the hose itself starts, and that's why they say it can be plus or minus 1 or 2%. I'll bet Simon said that to you a few times.
Yeah, he has. Yeah.
Yeah. So it can go, and it can actually get longer or shorter, plus or minus.
Yeah.
So when you're designing something, you've got to. That's why it's so very important to understand the construction of the hose. What's the other consideration for the hose?
In terms of overall.
Yeah, look, when you're working with the hoses, Simon and I once were involved with a experiment out of England with Dunlop.
Yeah.
And Dunlop had this great idea. They're a big hose manufacturer, English hose manufacturer, and they said, tell you what we're going to do. We're going to create this 3/4 inch hose that's going to work at 20,000 PSI. And we said, wow, send us a length so we can put ends on it and test it. And so they did. They sent us a 6-meter length.
Yeah.
When it arrived, guess what we had to move it with?
What?
Forklift. It was that heavy, you couldn't even lift one end of it. And they're saying, oh, well, you just put the fittings on. We're saying, who's going to use it?
Yeah. I haven't thought about the practical use of it.
The practical use, they're saying we can contain the pressure. What we can't do is without the weight, without all, and I think it was 8 spiral.
Okay.
Right. Now, if you look at your nylon, you're now starting to get 8 spiral because of technology, but very, very narrow technology, right?
Hey, can I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
What's the purpose of having braided wire hoses if spiral is better?
Price.
Price.
It is always price made.
Yeah.
Let's not get into this idea that it's always about design. It's not.
No. It was just for my note.
Okay, now add it to cost.
Yeah.
You know the difference between a price and a cost.
No.
Okay, so the price of the 8-wire rubber hose weighing a ton was a very nice price. We could do it for, at the time, I think 3/4 inch at 10,000 PSI was $20, $30.
Yeah.
And then if we went to 20,000 PSI, we could do it for $60. That was the price. But then now think about the cost.
Yeah.
Two people to lift up one end, right? You couldn't contain the fitting on the end of the hose. Those now become the externalities, the costs.
Yeah.
And so in the end, both Simon and I laughed and we said, no, especially in this country where OC health and safety is so important.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no way in the world anybody's gonna look at that, Meg.
Yeah.
You understand? Okay, so let me ask the question. What are the two principles we've been talking about? These are principles. What are the two principles?
Well, gas
I
is
didn't tell you we were going to get tested, right?
well, gas is compressible, therefore more dangerous than liquids was the first one.
Yeah, but I'm only interested in the principle. I gave you my opinion.
Okay.
What's the principle? What is the absolute principle? You were correct in what you said. You just didn't need the opinion. Danger is relative.
Gas can be compressed, fluid
Yes,
can't.
yeah. The absolute principle is gas is compressible, fluid is non-compressible, or some smartass is going to tell me, no, that's not true. It's 99.9% non-compressible. For our purposes, it's non-compressible.
Yeah.
All right. So those are the absolute principles of the business. Okay. So now, what are the three areas of a hose?
Both the inner core, outer core, and the wiring in between.
What are their purposes? What's the purpose of the outer core?
Purpose of the outer core is to protect the inner core. Purpose of the inner core is
It's directly to protect the reinforcement.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
The environment, like for the environment. So you want to.
That's a very important distinction, Jimmy. Very important distinction, because when we get to
No, I understand that. Yeah.
inner liner, okay. So now, what's the inner liner have to be?
Has to be compatible with the fluid or gas.
Exactly right. So there's no point selling, and in the old days, it used to happen a lot, where the liner wasn't compatible, and we had inside liners just disappearing.
Yeah.
Because they didn't understand fluid compatibility. So what we've talked about now, outer cover, tube, and what's the wire? What type of wire can you have?
Spiral and braided.
Spiral and braiding, and what's their purpose?
To keep the hose.
To protect the inner part, which is kind of conveying the liquids. And
How
also,
about just a simple word, reinforce?
what's right?
It's to hold pressure.
Mm-hmm.
It's to reinforce all the stuff that's going along. If you get some chemicals on the wire, what do you think happens to the wire?
It's going to probably, if it's acidic or oxidizing agent or anything, it's going to corrode it.
Yeah, and it's going to cause real problems real quick, right? And you might not see it until you get squirted in the eye,
Yeah.
right? And you don't want to have fluid injection, right? What has Simon told you about fluid injection?
Yeah. Lots of bad things. One day a guy was out at Alcoa or something, and there was a hose under pressure with oil in it, and he got just like a nick on his hand, kind of, because he was playing around with the hose. First off, he didn't even realize till like a week later or something, and then he started, like, his veins started popping up, and real bad.
And so you've got to understand that if you inject, can you see me okay? You inject fluid in here, you think that, oh, it's a pinhole. Well, what happens is it spreads like that.
Yeah.
It goes out in a spiral. And so when you think the damage is here, the damage is all here.
Yeah.
And it's all poison.
And also, if you get injection with air, it can go into your heart and just kill you.
Mate, it's not only that. If you're like on the ships, when they check for air leaks, they don't use their hands.
Yeah.
They use a broomstick. It'll cut your fingers off.
Yeah.
You don't go searching for an air leak with your hands,
No.
right? In a high pressure situation. So you've got to understand, if you understand the principles, then we can go into the part numbering system. It's really that simple. So what you're really looking at, if you write the 3 words down, there's, as we go into the threads, combining with the hose, now you've got sealing, anchoring, and compatibilities. So you've got on the hose, you've got outer, inner, and reinforcement, right? Now when you're looking at the fittings that go on, the fundamental issues that you've got is, will they seal? How do they anchor? And are they compatible? So what do you think that means?
That's just the prerequisites to make a successful fitting.
Well, a successful hose.
Yeah.
All right. So now, when you're talking about sealing, what are you talking about? There's some fittings on the desk next to you. You got a fitting close to where you guys are sitting on my little.
Yeah.
Just get me a hose fitting from there. One with a ferrule. Just grab one. I usually have props.
Yeah, that one.
How you guys going? Am I keeping you awake?
Yeah.
Okay, show me that. Okay, unscrew the ferrule off. That's a reusable fitting. Do we have any swage fittings?
No, we don't. Not up here, at least.
Okay, the principle is the same anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me what you see on that fitting. Just describe the fitting to me.
Well, you got a tail with a thread on it for this. Sometimes there isn't a thread.
Just give me a second.
Yeah, no worries.
No, it is, so I cut them off.
Cool.
Okay, so when you're looking at it, describe it to me, spin it around, tell me what you see.
You want to take that one? Sure. So you have the hose tail with the grip on it. Usually there's obviously the ribbing to hold it.
Okay, so what does that do?
It holds it in place. Well,
So what do you call that?
on the inside of the hose.
So what is it?
The tail.
Yeah, but what does it do? It anchors.
Yeah.
What does it anchor to?
It anchors to the inner core of the hose.
To the inner core of the hose. How does it seal?
With the seal face.
Oh yeah, so
Yeah.
we got the seal face.
Yeah.
So how does it seal when it's inside the hose?
You mean like have it in place and having a seal around it? That'd be the ferrule.
Do you think it's the ferrule?
It's the ferrule compressing the hose onto the tail.
Okay, so what is it actually doing?
Really just holding it in place.
It's anchoring it.
Anchoring it, yeah.
Okay, but how does it seal? Look at the design of it.
Yeah.
Jamie, you've been, Andrew, you've been taught that nylon flows, right?
Yeah.
When you're compressing something with about 40 or 50 tons of pressure, do you think it flows?
Yeah.
Okay. When you're screwing that into a hose, you don't see very many of these now. When you screw it into the hose, what happens to the hose?
It's compressed.
Yeah. Tell me what physically happens to the hose.
It gets hot.
It gets hot.
Yeah.
When it gets hot, what do you think's happening to the rubber on the inside?
Sealing to it.
It's getting softer, right?
Yeah. So it's more malleable to fit all the gaps.
So it's more malleable to fit into all the gaps. Exactly right. Okay. So what you're going to expect to see when you see the inside of that hose is you're going to see down near the end of the tail. So if you hold your tail up a bit, okay, see where those threads finish? You can see it's all chamfered, right?
Yep.
Okay, that's to get it started, and then all of a sudden the rubber's going to flow to hold it, and it like wedges it.
Yeah.
Now, the rubber has warmed up, and have you ever made a reusable?
Yeah, I have.
Okay, what happens once you finished?
The fitting's hot.
The fitting's hot, then it cools down. Have you ever tried to turn it then?
Turn it once it's cooled.
Yeah.
Yes, I have.
And what happens?
Well, it's hard to do.
It's extremely hard to do. Why?
I'd say because the rubber has all fallen into place or been compressed into place.
Yeah, it's all gone back to, and it's got a memory now, and it's
Cooled like
really
that.
compressed.
Yeah,
And when you turn it, you're twisting the rubber now, and you'll tear it.
yeah,
That's why when people say, "Oh, we can reuse these," actually not.
yeah.
It's they're
You can reuse the fitting, but you can't reuse the hose.
No.
not definitely not the hose, but you can't even reuse the fittings technically because do you think that it's been distorted in any way?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
It's been applied
Okay,
to it.
think about those threads, what they're going through as you draw it in.
Yeah.
yeah,
You're putting heat on those threads. So a lot of times people make the same mistake. It's field attachable. It's not reusable. And when people say, oh, you can reuse it and get away with it, a lot of times when they use that, the pressure's so low you can't. But in the higher pressures, man, you stick way away from it. You say, no, we can do it, but we're not going to. And if we do it, we do it, and we're not going to charge you.
yeah,
Right? I'm not, we just say, if that's what you want, that's fine. You can make that decision. We'll put it together for you, but we're not going to guarantee it. We're not going to charge you.
yeah.
You know, if they're putting it on a new hose,
Yeah, you
No.
can't be stuck with that liability.
exactly right. You need to understand what's going on with it. Okay, now let's take the same hose tail, but now it's swaged. What does the swage machine do?
Heats it up.
Okay, now let's turn it on its side, right? Okay, now the ferrule goes over top of the tail.
Yeah.
And then as you bring the ferrule down, right, what happens?
Crimps around it.
Okay, look inside the back of the tail, or the back of the ferrule. What do you see?
Ridges.
Ridges. What do you think happens to those ridges?
They bite into the hose.
How about the hose flows into those ridges? The other way, are those ridges one way?
These because it's a reusable. These are actually spiral ridges.
Yes, but which way are they? When you say they're spiral, they'll spiral on. But when you hook them, do they hook one way or two ways?
Yeah, they hook like barbs.
Yes, one way.
Yeah, one way.
So if you pull it this way, they hook. If you push it that way, they don't.
Yeah,
They spiral in. Same thing with a ferrule. If you look at the inside of a swage ferrule, it's not a lot different because what it does is gathers the material.
yeah,
In your mind, you're swaging the swage. Can you see? You can see my hands now, right? So as you're doing this, you've got the swage machine that's coming in. What's it doing?
compressing the hose.
No, it's not compressing the hose at this stage. It's going and it hits the ferrule. What's it doing to the ferrule?
I have no idea.
It's folding the material into the ferrule. Where do you think that material goes?
Yeah,
You started off this size and you finish that size. Where do you think all the material is?
Into the gaps in between them.
So what? No, it doesn't go into the gap so much. It goes into itself. That's what a swage is. It's like a horse farrier. The metal goes in like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, have you ever tried to cut a ferrule after you've swaged it?
no, I haven't. That's something I haven't done.
Okay, well, you try and do that. Your hacksaw will skate across it because the density changes.
Mm.
So when you're swaging it, you'll hear it go, and that's the metal gathering.
Yeah,
And then all of a sudden you go, you've heard that, haven't you?
yeah.
Okay, what's happening now?
There's not really much more compression or
Yeah, but what's going on? You of all people, Andy, you know what's going on with the plastic.
Oh yeah,
It's starting to flow.
yeah.
Where do you think it's flowing
Flowing
to?
into the gas.
Into the gaps.
Into
And when
the
you
gas.
do rubber, it flows a lot faster than the plastic.
Yeah.
And then it goes, and then all of a sudden you're,
Yeah.
when it goes like that, what have you hit?
The tail.
The tail.
You've reached the crush at least.
No, you've hit the tail. You haven't necessarily hit the crush yet. You know, because you put in your pins,
Yeah.
right? And then all of a sudden you say, okay, now I'll check this pin, and
Yeah.
then you say, okay, it needs a bit more, and then you put in the next pin, and you can test the inside crush.
Yeah.
Because it has to have a crush. When you're dealing with hoses at the pressure you're dealing with, they have to be crushed correctly. The other ones is very generic, and people get away with it. It's not the same level that you make a hose. That's why we don't let anyone just make it.
Yeah.
You actually have to have the patience, because once you get to the 10,000 psi and above, it has to be done in the correct way. Same thing applies now when you're thinking about it. So now we got the crushes, right? And so when you're doing a 1/4" hose, 2-wire 1/4" hose on the machine. Is there much pressure on the machine?
Not as much as a high tensile.
No, it's very quick. It goes, and you don't really hear much change in the tone, do you?
No.
Okay. Now let's put in an 1 1/4" 6-wire hose.
Yeah.
And when it's the tail, do you know about it?
Yeah.
So does the machine. Right? That's why you've got to be attuned with your ear.
Yeah.
You know, you can have all the gauges you want in the world, but I'm telling you, your senses will tell you a long time before the machine will. If you're tuned into what's going on. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
But what all you're experiencing on the outside is what's going on the inside. And so when you hear the sounds, and now you'll be tuned into the sounds, right? And you get a 1/4" hose, you can close that inner diameter that fast, it doesn't matter. Those machines will take it down to solid. They won't do that on a 1 inch or 2 inch. They just don't have the grunt to do that.
Yeah.
So what you're starting to understand is the relativity of inside dimension, right? The larger the bore, the greater material you have to capture,
Yeah.
right? You understand that? Why?
Because of that external pressure that's being put out from the inner core, it becomes so much greater if it's being forced in a small space.
Yeah, and so now you've got a lot more material compressed. And really that material, it holds it, but if it's fluid, what's that material want to do?
Escape.
But because it's like it's seemingly all solid and fluid, it holds its shape.
Yeah.
So that's a triple bond. Are you understanding?
Yeah.
So now you get to that moment. So when you're looking, show me the fitting again. Now let's really test it. Show me all the anchor points and show me all the sealing points on that one fitting.
Obviously, both of the threads are anchoring.
What are the threads are anchoring? Yes.
This seal face here is a sealing point, and so is the inside of the ferrule.
Yeah. Okay. Where else is it anchoring?
Is the hex considered an anchor?
No, the hex is not a anchor, but you're close.
The
Yes.
sits on, yeah.
So in yours, you have wire nuts and slip nuts.
Yeah. And the collars on 2-piece would be an anchor point.
Yeah. Yeah. If it sways, yes, the collar is an anchor point.
Okay. What's the difference between wire and slip nuts?
Yeah. So Andy will tell you because he knows.
No, I don't. Not in that
And your
terminology.
24 by 1.5s, right? Your half-inch fittings. Some of them you just push on, right?
Yeah.
And then the other ones have a wire nut going around them.
Yeah.
Okay, one's a wire nut, one's a slip nut. One slips over it.
Yep.
All right, and it's high. It's very high grade. Now, the ones with the wire nuts years ago, the sealing at high pressure was so bad that they've had cases where that wire nut becomes a jet, a water jet.
Yeah.
No, seriously. On the
No.
4 by 1.5s, that's why they went to the slip nuts. I think you mostly see slip nuts now.
Yeah.
But you do, when you're dealing in lower pressures, it's not such a big deal because you're not lifting off the seat face. And Andy, you will notice the smaller the seat face, the higher the pressure, the more threads you have holding it.
Yeah. Yeah. The 9/16 are
Yeah.
quite long. Yeah.
Yeah, not just quite long, but look at all the threads you have.
Thread. Yeah.
You've got 2 lots of thread holding it.
Yeah.
That's got to do with pressure. And
Yeah.
when you tune into that, you start to realize it. Is this making sense?
Yeah.
And so whenever you're making something, I want you to see in your mind what's going on. After a while, you don't even think about it. It's just going on, right? But if people don't explain it to you, you'll never know.
Yeah.
You know, you can teach a monkey to make a hose in 5 minutes, but to understand the making of a hose is a very different matter. Right?
So that helps prevent any, like, otherwise there would be a lot more issues of industrial accidents if people didn't understand the fundamentals of why they're doing what they're doing, what audio cues are
There's
listening
a lot more accidents than you know.
Yeah.
Right, because they really don't say very much. But the truth of it is that people need to be well trained. And people say, oh, well, anyone can make a hose. Yes, anyone can make a hose, but do they understand what they're doing?
Mm.
Right, and so you've seen it many times. You've seen, Andy, I'll bet you've seen where the locking collar in a swage fitting gets caught in the top of the ferrule.
Yeah.
And what do you do now?
Yeah.
You gotta cut it off and start again,
Yeah.
because it's going to affect the sealing and it's going to affect everything else.
That's when like the ferrule, you put it on the end of the hose, you put the fitting in, but you go to swage it, and it's actually not on the collar correctly because there's a collar here, basically. At the end of it's like this end is smaller, so it just clamps around it when you swage the ferrule. Sometimes it doesn't work out properly. You just have to there's nothing else you can do.
Yeah.
Okay, so what have you learned now? What have you learned about fittings?
Fundamentals.
They seal and they anchor and their compatibility. What's the compatibility about?
I'm assuming that's referring to having the correct fitting for the correct purpose, or is that
Material type.
Yeah.
What happens?
Actually, I have an example of that. Stainless steel on the 8-wire hoses. We had to change from the carbon steel to the stainless steel because they were working in a corrosive environment.
Yeah, and all of a sudden it changed the game, right?
Yeah, and that even goes down to how long we had to swage them for and what settings we had to use.
Now you're talking about the compatibility. You can talk about the compatibility of the fitting to the hose. You can also talk about the compatibility of the fitting to the environment.
Yeah.
Very, very important to understand. So the 3 keywords: sealing, anchors, and compatibilities. You only need to remember keywords, you guys, and let your mind take you where you're at, because these are all the simple things that people don't pay attention to. All right, now you got your part numbering system, right?
Yep.
I'll run it. I did this thing years and years ago, so I'm gonna see just how good I really am. See if I can. I tried doing this to see whether it would make sense. Okay, so you got your part numbering system.
Yep.
As I do this little whiteboard, let's see if I can get you to understand it through this, and then we'll talk about it. All right. Follow along with your part numbering system.
I don't think think it's playing on our end. I think it's playing on his though.
Oh,
Okay.
are you playing the?
Are you playing the video now?
Yeah, can you see it?
No.
I wonder why that is. So I'm here exciting myself and not you guys. Okay, so let's share. Let's go there. Can you see it now?
No.
We can see that you've double clicked on it, but no, unfortunately, it's still showing us the folder you got it from.
Okay, so now let's stop sharing and let's share now. Oh, there it is. Okay, can you see it now?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, it goes, and I can't speed it up, unfortunately, but follow it through. Here. Old man. Okay, there we go. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can see. Now you're going to see the principles that this takes into account. Fittings, angles, threads, styles, and thread sizes, rules. Okay? So red. 1, prefix is red and denotes the shape of the part being described. 2, suffix is red and denotes manufacturer's material. Okay, do you guys understand what that means?
Yeah.
So Jamie, this is a color-coded part numbering system. Andrew, you've seen my tags that I did when I began, right?
Yeah.
Your eyes will pick up the red, and immediately you see the red, it tells you something. That's how fast it should be. And you can see the suffix. The prefix is at the beginning, the suffix is at the end. Okay, A dash. You've seen A dash?
Yeah.
Okay. Suffix. PO. What does PO mean?
Ow.
Now. All right. Still, system has a 2-2 beat. What does 2-2 beat mean?
Well, that just, yeah, 3 syllables per each section.
So it goes A dash,
Yeah.
18, 04, 19, 04. Why is that important?
It's easier to remember and it makes sense.
It's because can you sing a song from 10 years ago?
Yeah, because it follows fundamental music structure.
It follows fundamental rhythm and beat. Now, when it's on your computer, the beat is 3-3. Why is it 3-3? On a computer, a character is a space. If you read it on a computer, it's too hard to read if you don't have the space. A dash space, 19 space, 04 space, 19 space, 04. Your eyes pick it up. The most powerful educating sense we have is our eyes, followed by, and once you start talking in the big, A dash, 1902, 1902, your mind starts to see the fitting in your mind. You understand? That's the beauty of it. And so now all of a sudden you're starting to see it. So let's have a look. Let's keep going. It's a beat. And it becomes blue. Okay, so now you've got a beat of the color. Red, blue, yellow. Shape, thread, size. You understand? And then you've already described the shape, so it goes, if you have 3 threads, how many blue and yellows do you have?
3.
Yeah. Yes, you've got to have 3 that describe the threads and 3 that describe their size. You've already described its shape. Do you understand? Okay, so let's keep going. Okay, so what's that? What's that, Andrew?
A 10 tail,
10 tail, what size?
-12.
Yeah, 3/4. Right, because it's -12 what?
Out of 16.
Yeah, 12/16 of an inch. Now, can you see it? Do your eyes pick it up very cleanly?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go. Degrees of angle or shape is indicated by letters A to Z. What does that mean? A straight, B
I can't remember the.
Yeah.
45. It follows a pattern, you guys.
Yeah.
45, 90. So let's watch it. It's all driven by patterns. So now we've got in the red box B dash. What's B dash?
45.
Fittings, size, and thread styles denoted by numeric system. So now that's blue again. 10, what's that?
10. In the, wait, can you go back?
Swage tail 1 and 2 wire.
Swage tail 1 and 2 wire. But here's the thing you've got to understand. If you look at your system, have a look. The hose tails, right? The hose tails go from 0, 0 to what number? Look in your system.
13, isn't it?
Oh, what does it go to?
15.
15. Why does it go to 15? You've got to, what happens if you've got to expand? We've only, in a 2-2 system, we can only have 100 available numbers,
Yeah.
right? So now we've got 10 is swage 1 and 2 wire. What does your mind see? You understand? Hose tail. 6. Hose tails and fittings thread sizes measured in 1/16 of an inch. So you got that there. What size is that in 1/16?
3/4.
3/4. Imperial, now we're starting to get finely into the detail. Imperial thread sizes measured in 1/16 of an inch. What's imperial?
Inches as opposed to metric.
Exactly right. And now you've got JIC, BSP, MPT. They're all going to be measured in 1/16 of an inch. And so when you're looking at your vernier, your mind has got to go in 1/16 of an inch. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's go. What size is that?
Half an inch.
Half inch, yes. Because when it becomes 0.8, what do you have to do? You go to its lowest common denominator.
Yeah.
It's not 8/16, right? It's 0.8 16ths, or it goes 0.8 half an inch. It's fundamentally half an inch, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's half, but its dash size is 0.8. Okay, metric tube fittings are described by tube sizes, not thread sizes, and measured in millimeters. This is where most people make a mistake. How's a tube measured? Write this down, you guys, because you're going to have to remember it. How's a tube measured?
With the vernier.
Yeah, with a vernier, thank you. You measure a tube by its OD. Write that down. Tubes are measured by ODs. How's a pipe measured? How's a pipe measured?
By OD.
ID.
What's the difference
Pipe.
between a tube and a pipe?
One's measured by its ID and one's measured by its OD. That's why when you measure BSP and it says ½ inch, you can't work out why, because it's talking about the inside hole, not the outside thread.
Okay.
And that's why people get confused. You've got to know the difference between a thread, between a tube and a pipe. All right, and most metric tubes, when we get into that, I'll really show you that. We're not going to get there today, but you'll understand it. It's the easier of the two to work with. Okay. 22 what?
22.
Millimeters.
Yeah.
Read what's on the booklet you got in front of you. Right? It should be there in point 8, point 9. Metric stud fittings are described by thread size, not tube size, and measured in millimeters. What does that mean?
Outside diameter.
The outside diameter of the thread, not the outside diameter of a tube. That's why people get confused. And the funny part about it is, most times when people think it's metric, it's actually BSP parallel. But they don't measure it because they say, oh, it's got to fit into this rule. No. The European standard is into the valves BSP parallel, out of the valves metric tube. You may never have to get there. (10 millimeters). JIC fittings are described by tube sizes and measured in 1/16 of an inch. So how do you measure a tube?
OD.
OD. That's why when you see 7/16 thread size, it's 1/4 inch dash size, because it's measuring the tube. And what's important is the OD of the tube, not the thread. You understand?
Yeah.
You won't remember it all, I promise you. That's why it takes a while. That's why nobody studies it. 0.4. So that means that when you measure the outside of the tube, it'll be 1/4 inch or 0.25, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now we're just going through the rules. 11. U&O ring fittings are described by thread size measured in 1/16 of an inch. Okay, they're the same thread as a JIC, but they need an O-ring to seal.
Yeah.
So you know what they look like now, don't you? U&O ring. But they're not measured by the tube size, they're measured by the thread size. And people say, well, how come 7/16 in JIC is 1/4, dash size 1/4, and in U&O ring, it's 7/16? What's the difference? It's the same thread. What's the difference?
Where you measure it?
The way you seal. One seals on the face, the other seals on the O-ring.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, makes sense? How you going, Jamie? We're going fast now, right?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so now, 7. What does 07 mean? 7/16 of an inch. See how it's breaking pattern?
Yeah, that's why I didn't really want to say it would be in an inch. Why is that measurement even used?
Well, because it's a stud. It's measuring the outside of the thread. When you're doing JIC, it's measuring the outside of a tube. They're two different measurements.
Yeah.
Same thread, different dash sizes. This is to tune your mind. You could easily say 0404, which most people say, and you don't get it, right? Because they're two different functions. You can go to a machine to measure the tube and know what the thread is, right? And sometimes you can't take the fitting off. You have to know what the thread is by measuring the tube. If you measure if you have to take out the fitting out of there, you'll get that it's 07, and you'll get confused again. You'll say, well, it's 7/16, where in fact you're calling it 1/4. If you measure ½ inch BSP, and you'll say, what the hell is over 5/8? How do you call it ½ inch? How do you call it ½ inch? It's measured by its ID. The threads are on the
Inside.
OD, outside. You understand? I can see we're getting to the limits, but let's just finish. Komatsu metric fittings are described by thread size measured in millimeters. So the same thing applies. You just take it, and I'll show you all the rules around this next time. But you need to get the fundamentals first. 18 millimeters, 13. ORSF thread is tube fittings, R-tube fittings, and measured by tube size, right? But they're a bigger outside thread. So you can have a -20 ORSF, but it'll have a larger thread size, and you will have seen this visually.
Yeah.
Jamie, they're always bigger than the JIC, right?
Yeah.
They both fit on the same tube. You understand? You may not now, but you will.
Yeah.
SAE tube fittings should be are measured by thread size. You won't see much of these. These are on trucks, right? -10 is the one you'll see because it's 5/8 SAE, and normally we sell 9/16 JIC. They're interchangeable except for at 3/8 and 3/4. Well, those are things you learn from experience. Letters or numbers at rear suffix part denote material type or special functions. A-. What does that tell you? A-.
Straight.
Straight fitting, where did it come from?
Ow.
Al, exactly right.
Sorry, how do you know it's 8? No, yeah. Do you generally get many suffixes other than PO?
We used to get a lot because we used to describe it. Now people are too lazy, but yes, you should. You should have SS, and if you look in your part numbering, you'll see them all.
Mm-hmm. What's right? SS is stainless steel. So, okay, thank you.
And BR brass.
Mm-hmm.
There's one complete part number. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we'll just finish it. So now you see that's a picture of what it looks like.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. We're nearly ready to start measuring, but we're not going to do it today. You need to think about the principles first and what we're doing, and then the measuring will make sense to you.
Yeah.
All right. Jamie, how do you feel? What do you take away?
How do I feel? What? Sorry.
How do you feel now? What do you take away from this session?
It actually helps quite a dramatic amount with understanding pretty much all of the questions I had in between when I was here last week about why certain fittings are the way they are and that. And actually, I had no idea how a ferrule actually works and was very curious about that. So I feel a bit more confident having a lot more of the context around why certain things are the way they are. In regards to like the actual numbering itself, not a lot different other than the latter half of the section explanation was good for reinforcing, and in particular, like knowing whether to measure out of diameter or in a diameter, because the size part of the part number always is a little bit ambiguous to me.
Okay, do you see how this will train you to understand the industry?
Yeah.
You get in this in your mind. It's like you've seen me work, Andrew. When I see a problem, I don't look at the problem the same way someone else does.
Yeah.
You think about when I told you to get out from under the truck and let me have a look, right? And then did I solve the problem differently to what you guys were going to?
Yeah.
How many different solutions did you guys have?
2.
I think.
Yeah, and most of them involving changing the hose. What did I do?
Just repositioned it. And
What did I understand?
the hose's flexibility.
I understood how the hose sealed,
Yeah.
and I understood the ley line of the hose, which I said to you, no, there's a problem with the ley line of the hose, and you're never going to fight the hose.
The flow of the fluid as well.
Yeah, the flow of the fluids. And then we turned seemingly everyone threw their hand in the air, and it was going to be an hour or 2 hour job. How long did it take us?
Green sugary? Wait. no.
Sorry, Chris just had a question.
Should we just go talk to them? I got someone here to pick up a pallet. I just don't know what it is.
Okay, Chris, we're finished now. Just give us 1 minute.
Tell them though, because I have no idea about it.
Okay, we got 1 minute to go. Let's go. Come on.
Yeah.
So you understand that there's lots of ways to actually get to where you need to go. And the things I was considering was the type of hose, the flexibility of the hose, the fittings on the end of the hose, how they seal, where they're routed. All of that's like a digital printout in my eyes, for gosh sakes. And then, you know, the old guy gets under the truck where everyone else is floundering, and I have no strength to do it, but all of a sudden we did it. That's experience, and that's understanding the design of something. I said to you that I believe the ley line of the hose was the problem. You remember me saying that?
Yeah.
And the ley line was the problem, but it was nothing you could really do about it because the wires were just so tightly compressed. Doesn't matter. It wasn't going to bend. So you had to work out how to maneuver that into position using leverage.
Yeah.
You certainly weren't going to do it the way you're doing it because you're trying to twist it, and you'd be twisting against the wires. We put that on, and then the other end of the hose is straight, right?
Yeah.
Do I have to twist it to fit it onto a straight end?
Not overly.
No, I didn't. I didn't twist it at all because it actually fits in, screws on, anchors, seals, Bob's your uncle, Millie's your aunt, fill the oil up, and let's go.
Yeah.
Right? A job that might have taken 2 hours to sit down and think about it took us 15 minutes to correct. That's why you need to understand the actual what's going on, the principles of compatibilities, threads, and you know all that's going on. You understand that, you can do anything.
Yeah.
All right. So how do you feel about it all now?
Good.
Yeah. Yeah, you're a lightning bolt, aren't you?
Oh, you're asking for my feedback?
Yeah, your feeling, not.
Oh, well,
You
good.
learned something.
I like the fundamentals. I think about knowledge in certain subjects like a tree. Like you can pull an apple off a tree and eat it, and you're like, wow, that's the hose. But if you know about the tree and the trunk and the root system and everything else that goes with it, and that's knowing all this stuff. That's knowing how it actually all fits together. And I think learning that knowledge is actually quite good because then I can do what you did with your example with the bin truck. Once I know and understand those things, then I'll be able to work out.
Yeah, a hell of a lot faster than me, too.
Yeah.
All right, you guys, it's time to go.